Welcome back, Alpha Hunters. What a week we had. The markets are closed for the week of August the 25th, and let's talk about it. Starting off Monday, had a nice little gap up, traded a little bit higher initially, had a quick pullback for about an hour, and then we basically just rode higher all the way into close pretty much on Monday. Nice little pullback there in the last 15 minutes or so. And then Tuesday had a nice little gap up, faded all day pretty much, kind of came down, based out a little bit in the afternoon, had a nice little pop, but still dropped right there in the last 45 minutes. Nice little gap up there Wednesday, rode that higher pretty much the whole day, right until about the last 2 hours, then kind of just went sideways there a little bit. And then we got to the big one, NVDA earnings after the bell, and NVDA crushed. They crushed numbers, but the market did gap up. We sold off initially. We bounced real quick in the first 30 minutes, and then we just sold down for the whole day, ending on the daily lows there on Thursday. A little bit of a gap up there on Friday, pushed higher. This is when Jerome Powell started talking, and he was talking kind of just about the economy and different things, like kind of, their feel for the policy going forward on interest rates and stuff like that. And we dropped, rolled over, went down, took out the weekly low from Monday right there very briefly, and then we started just climbing. Pretty much climbed all the way up until about the last 30 minutes or so, a little bit of a drop right there towards the end. So I'll talk a little bit about NVIDIA and their earnings a little bit later. But as far as what Jerome Powell is kind of talking about, one of the tell things is he kind of shifted the direction of what the Fed is talking about, what they're focused on. And it didn't really seem so much, it's so much on inflation. But one of the things that he said was the economy is too strong. There you go. Take that for what you want. The economy is too strong. Think about that. So they are going to try and break the economy, and take that for what you want. I would not try to be bullish if the Fed's going to break the economy. All right, taking a look at sector rotation for the week, you can see the XLK did really good. And a lot of this was very optimistic bullishness going into the NVIDIA earnings Wednesday after the bell. You can see how much the XLK was really outperforming there. And then, once they gapped up, tech sold off very hard on Thursday. Very hard on Thursday. They did bounce back pretty good there on Friday. They were weak for most of the day, except for maybe like that last hour or two. And then you saw tech kind of come alive there. So, yeah, I don't know about tech right now. Just for how much they got sold off on Thursday, it was kind of worrying a little bit. The other sector that outperformed for the week is the XLY discretionaries, and in line for the week is the real estate ETF, XLRE. Some underperformers for the week sectors here: XLC, the communications, industrials, utilities, financials, materials, healthcare, and quite a bit of underperformance here from staples and energies. Federal Reserve balance sheet data dropped 1.82% on the week, so almost like a drop that they had about 4 or 5 weeks back. So we'll see what happens going forward, but they haven't really been trying to grow it, and if they are serious about crushing the economy just to get the economy back down, then you'll probably see them continue to drop the Fed balance sheet. The VIX. Well, the VIX started out this week kind of high just because it ended last week kind of high, but it came back down. What's kind of interesting here is this Friday candle. The Friday price action looks like a big lower hammer, and I was kind of like, what? That's not how it looked as the day ended. But if you do look intraday, it is kind of down below 16. So I don't know really kind of what's going on there. Got nothing, because it should be down here at the lower end of that daily candle. So I don't really know what's going on there on the data, but it's not unexpected. It was the first weekly close that we've kind of had over 17 last week, so it kind of made sense we had a little bit of a pullback this week. The DXY, the US dollar index, it just continued to push higher. I was kind of mentioning this late last week, at the end of last week's videos. Watch out for just the sideways consolidation here and the moving averages to come up, push it higher. That's kind of basically just exactly what happened. Just kind of a sideways consolidation. Just got pushed higher through a nice little upper wick there on Wednesday. And you thought maybe that was going to be the reversal because it was kind of coming up into this high area. And then Thursday, man, when tech was getting hammered, we just saw the dollar explode higher. Nice doji here on Friday. It could be reversal doji. Don't know. It is at a resistance level, but I am kind of thinking it might be a breakout here. We might break this high this next week. I would watch out if we don't turn over Monday and come back down pretty good, or maybe even Tuesday. I would think this is just going to consolidate and push higher, which then is going to take out this top and people are going to freak out. The GLD or the gold trust here, nice hanging bullish. It's hanging strong. It's kind of surprising, especially with how much the dollar was kind of pushing higher, especially the second half of the week. You see the gold was pushing higher. So gold held up, especially on Thursday. Surprised that gold didn't drop off there. Not looking too bad, but if the dollar pushes higher, I mean, this thing's going to break down. The US 10-year yield, all it's done is pull back on Wednesday. Very nice pullback on Wednesday. It continued to break out above October's highs back on Monday and Tuesday, and then it pulled back pretty good there on Wednesday, but it just pulled back into the moving averages. We've seen that time and time again during this uptrend. So if it continues to push higher early next week, I mean, it's not going to be great for stocks. So just be careful. And the two things I would really be watching this next week is the DXY and the yields. I would be watching that, especially like Sunday night, early Monday. If they're pushing higher, I would be very protective on stocks. The HYG kind of just all over the place this week, just up and down. So we're trying to figure out a direction here. But if yields kind of push higher, then HYG and bonds will drop, but they were just kind of up and down pretty good, pretty big candle days. So we'll see what goes on here. The LQD, the investment grade corporate bonds, well, they have definitely broken below, and really this week all they kind of have done is retesting these previous monthly lows that they broke down over the previous 2 weeks. So yeah, not exactly the best spot to be trying bullish. I mean, you know, it's never a bad thing to like look long term and try to be bullish, but I mean, if you're looking for a trade here, probably to the bearish side, just because of obviously clearly the support and resistance level that's sitting right in that level. Taking a look here at the week over week options change, and we see quite a bit of puts getting sold. Puts for this next Friday, September 1st, getting sold. Calls and puts for 3 weeks out, September 15th, getting sold. And then towards the end of the year, the Decembers and January 24, getting sold. All right, so that's kind of interesting, selling options that far out. And then you can see quite a bit of put buying here in October 20th. So really my perspective here is a lot of people are looking at this pullback, a little bit higher volatility, and they're selling options to collect some premium. But if we do break down, they'll be holding the bag. The AAII Consumer Sentiment Survey came down a little bit this week, down to 32.3%. So that is at least 3 weeks in a row now that it has dropped on the bullishness, and the bearishness is actually ticked higher. And it's almost like a third, kind of coming across here for bullish, neutral, and bearishness. So we'll see what happens if we break down through the 430 area on the SPY and get down to like 420, and then maybe we bounce around there for a little bit. Who knows what's going to happen with this sentiment survey. The CME Fed Watch tool, this thing had some pretty good week over week changes. Week over week, we actually had a little bit of an increase for September for a 25 basis point rate increase. So it was about 8% of a rate increase chance. So it's kind of interesting to see that. November, we saw a pretty good rate increase. Last week it was at 33%. This week it was up to 48%. So now it's looking like November going to be a rate hike, or at least that's the highest odds. So we'll see if that happens. December, it's, you know, December's saying, you know what, we're going to be at a higher level as well. Last week, 29% chance at being at a 25 basis points higher, and this week now 45.6% chance. So pretty good climb there in December. The January one's kind of interesting because January, the highest rate odds would be back down to our current level. So if we do that, September would be a hold, November would be a hike, December would be a hold, and then January would be back down. I don't think, you know, they would hike if their plan is then to cut in January. I think if January or March, they want to be back down to our current level, they would just hold it through November and December. That's just my perspective. But if they are serious about bringing down the economy or the economic activity, they will probably raise in November. Equal weight S&P 500, nice sideways movement this week on the week. You know, it's just hanging right on top of these 100 and 200 moving averages. So I would be real cautious, as this is kind of a tracker of the market. And for how much volume did come in on Friday here, if we do get below that, you know, a lot of people are going to be selling, as that's a pretty good support level, obviously, with that much volume. The DIA, or the Dow Jones ETF, did break down pretty good there on Thursday. It did have a nice little sideways movement to start out the week, and then Thursday just kind of got crushed off. Had a huge upper wick there to start the day on Thursday, and then just got crushed the rest of the day. Friday trying to bounce off of this 430 level, so we'll see if that is a bounce and it's going to go higher. That's kind of a tough one because none of the other major indices and averages kind of were breaking down, so, or at least they weren't on the week. So we'll see kind of what goes on with the DIA. That was not good. If you're the one leading in a direction, it's good in the bullish direction, it's bad in the bearish direction. The IWM also kind of looks like the RSP kind of sideways. The first parts of the week just sideways there, and then a huge lower wick there on Friday. Actually did break last week's low. Good decent amount of volume came in, not nearly as much as last Friday. So this could have just been like, bears trying to test how strong the lower end of last week was, because we did get down there on a lot of the indices. The Qs. All right, so the Qs, well, they were strong Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. They were very weak on Thursday. They were very weak. They were getting sold off very hard. So tech was not having a great day Thursday after NVIDIA just blew expectations away. And I think a lot of it has to do is we're not really seeing AI adoption in consumer areas so much, but what is going on is all the tech companies are actually having to invest in AI and that kind of stuff. So NVIDIA is seeing the uplift. We'll probably see some other semiconductors, maybe like AMD, Broadcom, maybe Intel kind of get some uplift as semiconductors continue to provide the infrastructure build out for AI going forward. Obviously, NVIDIA is really leading the way on this, but just thinking about a lot of the different companies that have reported earnings this earnings cycle, it doesn't sound like AI is getting, a huge boost to companies' earnings except for NVIDIA. And that's kind of the problem, is because all these companies that are building out the infrastructure for it, they're just gonna be raising their costs and their expenses going forward. But the Qs definitely did end the week up off the lows of last week, especially compared to some of the other indexes. The SPY. Okay, the SPY. Well, let's take a look at it. Now, the Qs we know broke down this hump from back in June. The SPY has not. It kind of got down into that range last Friday, but we did not break down. It did bounce, and we did throw two pretty good lower wicks down kind of into those zones down there around the mid 430 area on Monday and Friday. But what I will say is Thursday, that candle is a very bearish candle. That's a hugely bearish candle. And the other thing you didn't want to see was then on the follow through day, you didn't want to see another breakdown day. We actually did get below Thursday. You didn't want to see that. We gapped up pretty good, but then we still, in that first to second hour, we still sold down and broke Thursday's low. So yeah, that's not a great sign there on the market. You were wanting to see, even if we did sell down on Thursday, you were wanting to see a gap up and run higher, and we just didn't do that. And take a look here at this weekly chart. Weekly, we know we broke down last week pretty good, but now this week all we did was we just threw a huge upper wick for the weekly. And if you just saw this on the daily time frame, I mean, you're just licking your chops to see this break down last week's low, because I mean, that would just be a breakdown candle inside upper wick daily candle, right? But this is on a weekly time frame. So if you see that on a daily, yeah, you're going to be pretty aggressive on being bearish on that as long as it breaks down. But the longer it goes sideways here without bouncing, then the more likely it's just going to break down eventually. And we'll see what happens this next week. But the thing I'm going to tell you, watch out. I mentioned it a little bit earlier. Watch the dollar and watch 10-year yield, or watch really kind of all the yields. But the 10-year is kind of just the one that a lot of people just kind of track and keep track of. But if both of those start pushing higher late Sunday night as the futures kind of open and into Monday morning when the market's opening, man, I think we'll see a lot of selling come into the market, probably pretty quick. So Alpha Hunters, have a great weekend. Take care.